Hello, fellow poetry lovers. Today I'm going to do the poem Manzini, Escape Artist by Gwendolyn MacEwen. Manzini, Escape Artist. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. Listen, there was this boy, Manzini, stubborn with gut, stood with black tights and a turquoise leaf across his sex, and smirking while the big brute tied his neck, arms, legs. Manzini, naked, waist up, white with sweat, struggled, silent, delinquent. Suddenly he was all teeth and knee, straining slack and excellent with sweat, inwardly wondering if Houdini would take as long as he, fighting time in the drenched muscular ropes, as though his tendons were worn on the outside, as though his own guts were the ropes encircling him. It was beautiful. It was Thursday. Listen, there was this boy, Manzini, finally free, slid as snake from his own sweet, agonized skin, to throw his entrails white upon the floor with a cry of victory. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. But listen, it was Thursday. There was this boy, Manzini. And you'll have to forgive me if I messed up in there. I may have, but let's just go through the poem because this is what I do. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. That's how this poem starts off, which in some ways is like almost like a carnival barker of like, you can see this on a sign for a circus. Now there are no bonds except the flesh, except it's also got almost kind of a biblical ring to it. I think it's the bonds and the flesh, that there's definitely so this is something that could be spoken by like a carnival barker, or this is something that could be proclaimed by a prophet, or be like, have a kind of a biblical thing. And it's like, and there's that urgency of the listen, I have something to tell you. Listen, I want to draw you in, you suckers out there, or listen and hear the truth, you sinners, you fleshly beings. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. And we have Manzini, this boy. It's a boy, Manzini, stubborn with gut, stood with black tights and a turquoise leaf across his sex, which is the turquoise leaf across his sex. Almost you're conjuring up this almost, it's like an Adam-like creature having, a fig leaf covering his sex. That's it. Well, I guess it's post-fall, because Adam is somebody who he wears the fig leaf once he knows, he becomes human. He wants to, he falls. He's a fallen creature at this point. So while he's a young boy, this boy, but he's also got the leaf across his sex. So it's you're the fallen creature, if we're going to go into the kind of biblical thing of that. And it's like, in the second stanza, it's, and smirking while the big brute tied his neck, arms, legs. And there's the thing of the big brute, which I guess, we can get a Goliath, but, it's stagecraft of like, we're going to have this small boy and we're going to have a big brute be the one who ties his neck, arms, legs. So you get this kind of against the odds thing. Where we also get the idea of kind of the pacing of this poem. I hopefully I didn't read it so quickly, but it's a poem that seems to kind of go quickly. And this whole tied his neck, arms, legs, it's like, it's done. It's an action that seems to be done quickly on a stage. This is the setup. We want to get people in, and we got to get them going quick. But also just the grammatically of just not having the commas there between the neck, arms, legs. And it's Manzini, naked, waist up, and white with sweat. White with sweat, and then we there's that line break, and we get to the next stanza where we get struggled, silent, and delinquent he. We'll find a lot in this poem. There's the line breaks are interesting in this poem. It's quite a good thing to memorize a poem, because in some ways you say it quickly. It's hard to actually memorize because you get caught up in these line breaks. But it's also good to remember that the poet has put these line breaks in here. So struggled, silent, and delinquent he. So it's interesting when you group all these words together. It kind of gives it, you start to think about these things of doing. So struggled, silent, and delinquent he. Delinquent, that's the youthful thing again. There's the idea of it's a crime. There's some kind of a crime going on here. Neglectful, something overdue as well. We're going to get into this thing of fighting time, and delinquent is like, oh, you're behind the time. And it's like he was suddenly all teeth and knee, straining slack. So teeth and knee, it's like one knee, one tooth is like kind of the expert escape artist is using his tools, which is the teeth, one knee, kind of worming his way, snaking his way through stuff. Straining slack, which is, it's straining slack and excellent with sweat. That little chunk there, it's straining slack and excellent with sweat. So you can see the contractions, the contortions of this escape artist, just within that straining slack. It's like quick movements again. And excellent with sweat inwardly. And excellent, straining slack and excellently with sweat inwardly. So there's the excellent with sweat inwardly. There's a kind of an inward function there. These amazing kind of line breaks again. Wondering if Houdini would take as long as he, fighting time in the drenched muscular ropes as though his tendons were worn on the outside. Wondering, Houdini, the great escape artist, which, obviously an escape artist like Manzini would be modeling himself. A lot of escape artists would model themselves after, as he, fighting time and the drenched muscular ropes. There's a thing in here of he's fighting himself, he's fighting the limitations of his body, he's also fighting time, which, has its effects on the body. We get this drenched muscular ropes. So we're giving the ropes muscles now, which shifts into as though his tendons were worn on the outside. These are muscular ropes. These are the tendons, or these are his guts of the ropes encircling him. And indeed, there's this whole thing of, at the end, there's like, and now there are no bonds except the flesh. It's like the escape artist, the only bond that actually is restricting this escape artist is his his own body. That is what the only trap is left. And indeed, I at the beginning here, I kind of neglected to talk about that. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. There's a kind of carnival barker thing. There's a biblical thing. There's also, this is a poem that was originally published in 1968. I should have put that at the beginning, but we'll drop it in now. Is published originally like a 1968 collection, where you get kind of the idea of the 60s of kind of like the breakdown of societal restrictions, the furthering of scientific stuff. So there's also that of like, what are the bonds left in this society? This is a society that is testing the limits, and it's like, are there no bonds left except the flesh? And so let's go back to, as though his own guts were the ropes encircling him. It was beautiful. It was Thursday. Listen, there was this boy, Manzini. So we get that repetition again of, listen, there was this boy, Manzini. You have to know this. This is important stuff. It was Thursday really puzzled me for a long time, because I'm going like, oh, Thor's Day. I'm thinking, Jove's Day. And as a lot of times, I'm not a smart man. I'm just somebody who Googles stuff. And it was like Thursday, also known as Holy Thursday, or as Ascension Day. Could be, and when we get into Ascension, I think I went, aha, pay dirt. It was Thursday. Ascension Day is it's the 40th day of Easter, which is to celebrate, and it celebrates the ascension of Jesus to heaven, his body to Jesus bodily to heaven, which you have to say, if there's the primo escape artist in our literature, it has to be Jesus, who indeed escaped his earthly bonds and ascended to heaven to sit at God's right hand. So, there's a kind of a question here of like a performance of, this is like Manzini, he's an escape artist, and he's performing for what is he performing for? It's for entertainment, but what do we get out of something like an escape artist? What do we get out of something like art? And what do we get something out of like the symbol of Christ ascending bodily to heaven, of this escape, of this transcendence, the ultimate transcendence? So I finally went, aha, I think that's where you were going, Gwendolyn MacEwan. So yes, it was beautiful. It was Thursday. Listen, there was this boy, Manzini, and finally free, slid a snake from his own sweet agonized skin to throw his entrails white upon the floor with a cry of victory. And I mean, all the alliterations of finally free, slid a snake from his own sweet agonized skin. It's just like this slithery thing. And indeed, we go from, at the very first stanza of this Manzini escape artist as Adam with his fig leaf, to being transformed to the snake, and the snake in the Garden of Eden. It's an interesting transition from someone who's slid, who has escaped bodily mounds, maybe has perhaps transgressed here. We go back to the idea of being a delinquent, of being a kind of a criminal here, of trespassing. And it's like, is what Manzini doing? You're not being officially sanctioned as like the son of God, but you're slipping the bonds of your limitations of your humanhood. Which, I mean, you could talk about Adam and Eve pressing, like, we want to know, this is something that God said we weren't supposed to know. We want to know this knowledge of eating from the garden of eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And we have Manzini changing from Adam into the very snake, the very tempter himself. Is Manzini tempting us, the reader, or the people who are watching him, to tempt them to also transgress? And it's like, and to throw his entrails white upon the floor with a cry of victory, which in some ways it's like, if you actually did rip out your entrails and throw them white upon the floor with a cry of victory, it would be like you were dying. But it's like, no, he is not dying. Now there are no bonds except the flesh. But listen, it was Thursday. There was this boy, Manzini, and we get that final repetition, and I hopefully, maybe I even have text here going, now there was this boy, Manzini, and it's like dash. It's like a dash of, like, we're cut off in the middle of it. Like, this is an endless cycle. This is an endless repetition, or this is suddenly just a hard stop. Now there was his boy, Manzini, and it's, sorry, I got a little excited there. I got excited there. So I love the twisty, naughty, kind of breathless pace of this poem. I don't think it's just me being breathless in this one. And with that cry of victory at the end, I love that. But, this is a poem about an escape artist, but I think it invokes escape artists like Adam, like Christ, like Manzini himself, who actually, while I was looking up this poem, it's like Gwendolyn MacEwan, I believe, just actually based this poem on a young escape artist who is still alive today, Manzini. But I think it's obviously it's not strictly a biographical piece here. But there's this thing of Manzini, escape. Like, what is he escaping? And it's like, are we all escape artists, or are we all trapped by our flesh? You could have the thing of, if you believe in a life after death, that is an ultimate escape. Or are you somebody who believes that, nope, when you die with your body, you don't escape. So there's that idea as well. So yeah, that's Gwendolyn MacEwan. Gwendolyn MacEwan, which I should have really put at the beginning of this, was a poet, novelist, born in 1941, died in 1987 at the age of 46, was a high school dropout, an autodidact, which you get to call yourself an autodidact when you've taught yourself Hebrew, Arabic, Greek, French, and you translated stuff from those languages. We're also interested in the Gnostics in ancient Egypt and in magic. And just like an amazing poet. There's a poem of hers. She did series of poems on T.E. Lawrence, which got me to read T.E. Lawrence's Lawrence of Arabia, T. Shaw, Lawrence of Arabia, got me to read his 7 Pillars of Wisdom. So always been a favorite Canadian poet of mine. So yes, that has been my little blah 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 about Manzini, Escape Artist. And if I have had text running through this thing, if I haven't found it too much of a challenge, I'll credit Brian from Bookish for I watched him do a video on Slyvia Plath, which I will link down below, where he used text to actually kind of put the text out in front, so that while I'm blabbing about it, people can actually look and see the text itself. So yeah. Manzini, Escape Artist by Gwendolyn MacEwan. I read that in her collected poems, Magic Animals, which I would heartily recommend. More poetry videos later.